After the Toronto Blue Jays' latest loss to the Oakland Athletics, of all teams to lose to in the major leagues, things are starting to get ugly, and we're going to try to make sense of this season that has been sort of a roller coaster ride for the Blue Jays in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse, and the sentiments are pretty much the same around Toronto Blue Jays Twitter, around Toronto Blue Jays fandom in general. Whether they lose, even if they win the next two games by a combined 700 run differential, there's going to be outlasting disappointment because of that first loss yesterday against the Oakland Athletics. And there's a few things that I want to elaborate upon in this video. But Nick, just a rough start to a 9-game homestand just before the All-Star break here.
Yeah, this is a very important stretch, like we spoke about a lot. And Vladdy hit that home run yesterday, and things were looking up for the time being. And then they didn't muster any more runs. But make sure to hit the subscribe button before we get into it. We're on the road to 7,500, and we're about at 7,200. So thanks for that. And yeah, Peter, let's just we can get into it. And before we get into the big scope of things, which we'll be discussing about here, we can quickly touch on yesterday's game. And I know we'll be touching on that throughout the video. But in case you missed it, it was fairly ugly. The only person who really had any notable game was a couple players in the bullpen and Vladdy, who hit his big home run there. But Peter, the offense yesterday after Vladdy's big 3-run home run to put the Jays up 4-3, the offense went completely quiet. They showed no fight until the last inning when Vladdy showed a bit of fight, hitting that double in the bottom of the ninth, and then they went down 1-2-3 in order to seal the game off. On a game where every other team that we're competing with in the race, the Angels, the other teams like that, lost. The Astros as well. We could have gained ground, and it's not even about gaining ground at this point, but the Jays have been frustrating.
They have been very frustrating. And there's a few points that I want to touch on, Nick. But the first one, it goes beyond the talent on this team. It's just the mentality. It's the killer instinct. They don't have it. And everyone was trashing the Rays, including us early on in the season. They started the year off 12-0. No one was batting an eye. And it's because they played against the Washington Nationals, they played against the Oakland A's, and we're saying, well, yeah, they should be beating those teams. They're barely even major league teams. But why can the Jays not do that? Why are they not able to put away these teams? Now, Vladdy had a great game yesterday. Hopefully he can get it going. But the Blue Jays started off slow, and not for 1 second was I worried early on in the game. I thought they were going to go ahead and pull it out. Now, the Jays, they spot Chris Bassitt 4 runs. They take a 4-3 lead. Chris Bassitt faces the minimum in the next inning. And then you go ahead and you give a 1-2-3 inning right back to the Oakland A's. And you had 2 hits after that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. home run in the, what was it, third inning?
Third, yeah.
So there's just no killer instinct on this team. You got to be able to smell blood and step on your opponent's throat when the time comes, especially if you're playing against the Oakland A's. And I don't know how you feel about this, Nick, but when I watch the Toronto Blue Jays, I look at a nervous team. I look at a team that lets the moment get the best of them. Now, there's ebbs and flows in a season, in a 162-game season. There's ebbs and flows in a 9-inning baseball game. You're not going to be perfect all the time, but they're not able to put these teams away. And I don't even think there's any addition on the trade market that'll help them with that. It has to come from within. I don't think there's any additions that'll help get them over the top. I do think the talent is there. I think they're good enough to make a World Series run if they do get into the playoffs. But they need to change that focus, that mentality that they display every night, because it's just not there.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Obviously, I'm sure Ross Atkins, I'm like very, very confident he's going to make some moves at the trade deadline, whether they're big or small. Of course, we have Chad Green coming back and Hyun-Jin Ryu, which will help. But to win this game, you got to look through here and just looking at the roster here. The players that aren't performing need to start performing. They need to start getting hits. The offense has been nothing short of lackluster for the past, it seems like for the past month or two. Obviously, they've had little spurts, but they've never blown out. I can't even remember the last time. I'm sure there was one, maybe against the Astros, that they've blown out a team in a comfortable game. And I wasn't worried either when they went down 3-0 in the first inning. But at the same time, I wasn't confident like I would have been even last year, despite them getting eliminated early. And we'll touch on this as well. Players like Whit Merrifield, a couple of other, even Kevin Kiermaier, Danny Jansen's been pretty good as of late, but Brandon Belt as well are overperforming. They're exceeding the expectations you had coming in. And if you told me that coming into the season, I'd expect that we'd be first in the AL East with 100 wins if all these players were performing the way they are. But unfortunately, players like, I guess, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., even George Springer to an extent, Matt Chapman as of late, all underperformed. And I don't know. They're gonna hopefully figure it out. There is time to figure it out, but it's getting ugly now. And like we've been saying, it seems like for the past 2 weeks, it needs to start happening now, and it definitely needs to happen within. And I don't even know who there is to blame. Maybe it's the hitting coach, but at the end of the
Mhm.
day, you blame it on the players because they're not performing
Yeah,
well.
it's all in the players. And if you look at the new additions, you look at Kevin Kiermaier, Brandon Belt, Eric Swanson, all of those guys have exceeded expectations. Dalton Varsho has been pretty
Around
much what we
expectations. Yeah.
expected. So maybe a little bit below, but he's not, I wouldn't say costing you games. So yeah, Brandon Belt looks rejuvenated. Kevin Kiermaier makes all the winning plays. Whit Merrifield, like you said, has been off the charts, having a phenomenal season. But why has that mentality not rubbed off on the other guys, on the supposed leaders of this team? Whether it be Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette's been very good, so you can't say much about him. But Alec Manoah, what happened to him? You know, these supposed leaders, these guys that were supposed to bring you to a place that you haven't been in 30 years, which is the World Series, have not been performing up to par. Now, can they change that? Can they adopt that killer mentality that Kevin Kiermaier and Brandon Belt bring to the table? It remains to be seen, but that's what needs to happen here. Your best players got to be your killers. They got to be your hired guns, and they got to be the ones that win you your games, not your guys that are just role players like Kevin Kiermaier, Brandon Belt, and Dalton Varsho as well.
Yeah, and looking at the bullpen yesterday, Eric Swanson did his thing. Tim Mesa, we can honestly throw in there as well as having one of the best season of his career by a landslide. He's been very, very good, albeit in a short stint. And Trevor Richards as well. Like there's a lot of guys that are not overperforming, I'll say, but exceeding expectations. And you'd expect the Blue Jays to win here. And an interesting thing to touch on is what Ross Atkins will do. Will he sell? I know some people are talking about him selling. I can't see him selling, but there's a chance he makes some desperation moves. Maybe he trades one of our top prospects and Ricky Tiedemann or Brandon Barriere to get a big name that isn't really out there aside from I guess Marcus Stroman and a couple of White Sox players,
Mhm.
but who knows? Maybe he makes some desperation moves to try to get this team going like in 2015, but it's a bit of a different situation than 2015, but there is of course some similarities as well. But at the end of the day, Vladdy, hopefully yesterday, and you tested me this off camera, was maybe a turning point, that home run. And he's been showing a lot of flashes as of late, so I do think he's coming around. And if he can come around and the rest of the team kind of thrives off that energy, we'll be good to go, I think.
Mhm.
But it's yet to be seen, and we need it's an understatement to say this. We needed to sweep, but at this point, we need to at the very least win the series. Because if we lose one of the next two games, then it might be time to panic, which we might have another video for if they
Yeah.
lose another game in this series. But it's approaching panic territory. But at the very least, things are getting a little bit ugly in Jay's line.
Yeah, hopefully we don't have to panic after these next two games against the
I
Oakland
want to
A's.
crush
And
them.
yeah, yeah, you got to crush them. You got to go out there and make a statement. Okay, you dropped the ball in the first game. Now go ahead and show that killer instinct that everyone is asking for. But I want to touch on Vladdy a little bit further here, Nick, and I texted this to you as well. I think Vladdy needs to be the best hitter on this team if they want to accomplish anything this season. Now, Bo Bichette's great. He's a phenomenal hitter, probably some of the best bat to ball skills we've ever seen in the past 2 decades. He's legit. He's gonna finish his career with close to 3,000 hits if he doesn't get it. But let's look at Bo Bichette when he's going right, when he's hitting the ball to all fields. He's only getting on base at probably a 350 to 380 clip. His average will be around 330, 340, but he's not getting on base nearly as much as if Vladdy were to get hot. Now, when Vladdy is seeing pitches and spitting on those borderline ones, and he's hitting the ball hard and pulling the ball, then he's getting on base. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it seems like he's getting on base every second at bat because he has that kind of impact in the lineup when he's hot. So if teams decide that they don't want to pitch to Vladdy anymore, that'll in tune help the other guys around him in the lineup, and I think we'll start to see some numbers be inflated there in the offensive categories. But right now, what I want to see is just a change in mentality on this team, and I don't think there's any one addition that we could point to that is going to help get them over the top. It's all got to come from within because the talent is undeniable, Nick, and we've been preaching it all season long. If they get going, I don't think there's anyone in baseball that could stop them, but will they get going? That's the big question here.
Yeah, that's why I haven't lost full faith yet. We saw the Phillies last year, and maybe that's holding on to some false hope there because not every team is the Phillies, and that's very, very rare that they did what they did getting as far. But like you said, the Blue Jays, they just got to get in. If they can get in and they get hot at the right time, they have the talent, and that's kind of the silver lining here. But yeah, Vladdy got to be the best hitter on the team. At the very least, be on the same level as Bo with more power, because obviously
Mhm.
they're different players. Vladdy has more of a on base plus power, where Bo doesn't really walk at all. He hits for a lot of extra base hits. But if they can be, I say Vladdy obviously will be a better hitter, but if they can be alongside each other, then that needs to happen, because right now it's been Bo Bichette carrying the load and Vladdy kind of just being down there and then other people feeding off him. But anything else you want to touch on before we wrap it up and look forward to tonight's game, hopefully?
Look, I'm not losing hope. I really think that this team is special and that the talent is undeniable. They just need to find some sort of rhythm here, and we compare them to the Phillies all the time because the Phillies went on a run, and but they had stretches in the season where they looked like a very good team, and they had some stretches where they looked like a pretty bad team, but ultimately they were able to be dominant for stretches at a time. We haven't seen that dominant stretch yet from the Blue Jays. Granted, they're only 70 something games into the season, so there's still a lot of time for them to figure it out, but it's got to happen soon, and it's got to start with these next two games against Oakland.
Yeah, I agree. And the only dominant stretch they've had was when they were 18-9, the first 27 or so games. And ever since
There you
then,
go.
they've been pretty flat. But that'll wrap up the video. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed, and hopefully, the Jays can go ahead and destroy the Athletics tonight. And we have a stress free Saturday evening. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks.